Once upon a time, a war erupted between humans and demons. In the capital of the An's Empire, Manhwa, the roars of a monstrous creature echo as it crushes soldiers underfoot. The battlefield is strewn with such beasts. A man declares that their army of 2 million has fallen to the demons, and that the demon king has plunged their nation into ruin, spreading evil across the world. However, he proclaims that this will end today, as the Demon King will meet his demise at the hands of the hero. In the palace of Garak, a hero named Alex Vonelin prepares to confront the Demon King, Renart Wald Andares. The hero vows to end the reign of darkness. The mighty sword, Saint Cyrus, readies for battle, with its wielder declaring the end of Renart. The Demon King questions why they label his realm an evil empire, pointing out that the sun rises there just as it does anywhere else. The martial king Tisan accuses Renart of raising demons, claiming that their nature will vanish along with him. Renart counters, explaining that he merely taught the demons human tactics and ways to defend themselves, yet they are still branded as monsters. Renart inquires if the heroes have defeated the 4 heavenly kings. Cyrus replies that those demons could not withstand his sword. Renart then asks about the great warrior T, remarking that orcs, despite appearing barbaric, are hunter-gatherers who are unjustly dehumanized. Tisan laughs, boasting that they also eliminated the troll. Renart, shocked by the news of AA's death, laments the loss of a creature who, though intimidating, was kind. The Saintess Ellen reveals that they have also slain the evil dwarf. Renart facepalms, criticizing the ignorance of humans, as Michelin was merely a dwarf, not inherently evil. The Mage of Light, Jade, adds that they killed the Dark Elf as well. Renart becomes enraged at the mention of the Dark Elf, SI expressing his sorrow. Tisan accuses Renart of revealing his true nature and justifies the killing by stating that the Dark Elf had fallen to evil. Renart argues that her dark skin did not signify evil, but was a consequence of being forced into barren lands after humans destroyed her forests. He explains that she was a pure-blood high elf who happened to have a tan complexion. Undeterred, the heroes prepare to strike. Alex vows to avenge the fallen with his sword. Renart challenges him, asking who will avenge the other species. Alex denounces Renart as despicable, claiming that without him, the other species would not have suffered. Renart, realizing they refuse to listen, unleashes his aura. He recounts how the other species seek nothing more than freedom from slavery, yet they are deemed worthy of extermination for that desire. Renart declares that he will embody the role of the king they see him as, and unleashes powerful magic, sending the heroes flying. With tears in his eyes, he explains that he was once an ordinary mage who became a champion of the oppressed. He learned spiritual magic from the elves and sorcery from the trolls, mastering both to become the first 10-circle mage in history. Renart shares his sorrowful tale. Humans repeatedly raided his growing territory, forcing his people to flee until they decided to fight back. This led to the rise of the An's Empire. He insists that his actions were not motivated by hatred for humans, but by the belief that other species were not inferior. Despite avoiding retaliation, his civilization was attacked. While he understands humanity's fear, he cannot accept the slaughter of his people. Renart tells the heroes that it is his duty to protect his empire. He strikes Alex, sending him sprawling, and mocks him, saying that heroes only survive to the end in stories, while in reality, they perish early. The rest of the story unfolds off screen, leaving only Tisan standing, a formidable opponent far stronger than the others. Tisan charges at Renart, slamming the ground before him, shattering a massive portion of the palace, and forcing Renart to retreat. As the dust settles, a sudden explosion tears through the palace, and Renart is flung outside. Looking up, he sees Tisan descending at him with a devastating people's elbow. Renart quickly conjures a barrier, but Tisan confidently declares victory. With a crushing blow, he transforms Renart into a Glamba. Despite his broken spine and his realization of imminent defeat, Renart bluffs, asking if that's all Tisan has. Tisan begins to advance, and Renart acknowledges his loss, but refuses to surrender. Tisan claims this victory will liberate others from their demonic chains, but Renart grits his teeth, refusing to accept defeat. The thought of his people being enslaved again drives him forward. In desperation, he produces a mysterious artifact, declaring it the Eye of Time and Space. Even as a 10th Circle mage, Renart admits he cannot fully comprehend its power. Tisan demands to know what Renart plans to do. Renart explains it is a time and space regression spell that could turn back time, though he's uncertain if it will succeed. He begins to activate the spell, and as Tisan leaps at him to stop it, both refuse to back down. Tisan's punch connects just as the spell completes, releasing a massive shockwave. A brilliant light erupts, engulfing everything, and the scene transitions. The next moment, Renart awakens in a warm, unfamiliar setting. He opens his eyes, surprised to find himself in a log cabin within a forest. Marveling at the spell's success despite his doubts, Renart wonders where and when he is. He inspects his body, noting his impressive physique, though he finds it oddly muscular for a mage. Gazing into a mirror, he's shocked by his reflection, muttering that his face looks ridiculous compared to his younger self, when he charmed women and even elves. Slowly, recognition dawns he is in Tison's body. Before he can fully process this bizarre twist, a man calls out for Tison. A towering figure leans through the doorway, cheerfully declaring it's time to start the day. The man questions why Tison is acting like it's their first meeting, then clicks his tongue, accusing him of using the amnesia excuse yet again. He grabs Renart's now Tison's head like a basketball and drags him outside to train. Renart recognizes the man as Gerard Chrome Protes, Tison's former teacher. Tied to a tree, Renart tries to explain his situation, but Gerard dismisses him as overly talkative. Picking up a piece of bamboo, Gerard declares it's time for training. Renart groans as the blows land, crying out as the relentless strikes hit his stomach. He mutters that this is surely how he'll meet his end. Gerard comments that Tison seems softer than usual and wonders if the amnesia might be real. However, as part of the martial clan, Gerard insists that hard work and brutal training solve everything. He reminisces about his own memory loss and claims the solution is always to toughen up. Gerard scoffs at humans relying on weapons and armor, calling them excuses. Martial artists, he says, must overcome physical weaknesses through relentless training, becoming stronger through adversity. Gerard justifies his methods, insisting that Tison is the student he chose precisely because of his limitless potential. He keeps up his barrage of strikes while delivering a nonsensical lecture. Renart, now Tison, recalls his past life as he lies battered on the ground later in the day. Sarcastically, he thanks Gerard for the rigorous training. After returning to the cabin, Renart sinks into a tub, only to realize he's bathing in healing potion. Exhausted and bewildered, he contemplates the surreal turn his life has taken. Renart, now in Tison's body, relaxes in the healing potion bath and chuckles to himself, comparing it to the stories of queens bathing in milk. This is on a whole other level, he mutters. Curious, he asks Gerard what's in the bath. Gerard replies that steel needs to be cooled after hammering, leading Renart to realize that Gerard's seemingly brutal training methods have a purposeful structure. Reflecting on Tison's incredible strength, Renart deduces that this rigorous regimen is likely the key to Tison's power. As he soaks, Renart begins to ponder his existence. He wonders if his younger self still exists in this timeline, and if so, whether Tison's soul occupies his original body. Two hypotheses form in his mind. Either both souls coexist, or Tison's soul has merged with his younger self. Before he can dwell too much, Gerard interrupts, handing him a plate of food and insisting he replenish his nutrients. The scene shifts to Renart and Gerard lightly jogging up a mountain. Gerard asks if Renart is tired or ready for more training. Renart, begrudgingly exhausted, mutters a denial but quickly changes his mind, deciding that it is indeed just brutish training. Later, as he collapses into bed, gasping for breath, he curses his predicament and wonders how being in Tison's body will affect the future. He contemplates what might happen if he comes into contact with his younger self. Considering that his younger self won't become a mage for another decade, he wonders whether Tison's experience might influence his abilities. Determined to escape, Renart devises a plan and begins sneaking away that night. As he runs, he mutters that no matter the cost, he'll find freedom. However, Gerard quickly intercepts him, laughing and asking where he thinks he's going. Gerard casually mentions that Renart has been quiet for a couple of months, but is now attempting his 9th escape. Renart protests, trying to explain that he isn't Tison, but Gerard just laughs harder, sarcastically commenting on the creativity of his backstory this time. Last time, you said you came from another world, and before that, you claimed to be a martial master. This one's almost convincing. Gerard smirks, dragging him back. Despite Renart's repeated attempts, Gerard foils each escape, sharing that every disciple of Jim Unbreakable has tried to run at some point. Renart realizes Gerard will always track him down, and the only way to leave is to earn official permission. 2 years pass in a time skip, during which Renart awakens his aura. He marvels at the milestone, recalling that even Cyrus didn't awaken his aura until his late 20s. Gerard, however, downplays the achievement, insisting it's just the basics. He explains that living with heightened survival instincts speeds up the manifestation of aura and announces it's time for the next phase of training, sparring. Renart, initially excited, is quickly disillusioned as we hear his screams. Another 3 years pass, and we find Renart deep in the mountains under under a waterfall. Channeling aura into his fist, he prepares an attack called Calamity Horn. As the aura swirls violently around his hand, he punches the mountainside, leaving behind a horn-shaped indentation. Renard assesses his progress, concluding that the third stage might be his current limit. He explains that Calamity Horn is a skill that condenses all strength into one devastating attack, leaving a horn-like mark. He notes that the 9 stages of this skill culminate in a punch so powerful it can kill gods. Even in his past life, Tisan had only reached the 7th stage, while Gerard had ascended to the 8th. Renard realizes he needs to reach at least the 4th stage to descend the mountain. Frustrated, he decides to pause his stamina training for now and tries to cast a magic spell. He aims an air bullet at a tree, but the spell barely leaves a mark. Scratching his head in embarrassment, he laments that his current body doesn't seem capable of building mana, leaving him unsure if he can even reclaim his mage abilities. He senses a non-human presence nearby. An orc emerges, cautiously telling him to pretend he didn't see anything and promising not to harm him. Renard assesses the young orc, noting he appears to be only 3 or 4 years old and marveling at how quickly orcs must age. Curious, he wonders if the orc is escaping from somewhere. When the orc repeats his plea, Renard notices he's peaceful and asks if someone is chasing him. The orc is startled that Renard speaks his language, but admits he is being pursued. Renard offers to help and asks for the orc's trust. The orc hesitates, but says he can feel Renard's genuine intentions. However, he warns that helping him could bring trouble. Renard reassures him it's no problem and begins preparing a spell to conceal the cave entrance. The orc is surprised that Renard, who looks like a muscular warrior, is actually a mage. Grateful, the orc accepts the offer and hides in the cave. Moments later, Renard hears footsteps and voices. A man complains about the effort they're putting in for a few silver coins. Another asks if Renard has seen a young orc, offering a gold coin for information. A third man dismisses the gold offer as excessive, and their conversation is cut short when Renard firmly tells them he hasn't seen anything. Suspicious, the men notice orc footprints leading to the cave and decide to investigate. Renard blocks their way, declaring it's his dwelling and they have no right to enter. The leader of the group scoffs at Renard, calling him a brat and threatening him with their numbers more than 10 men. However, their confidence falters as they realize Renard's immense physique. Recalling Gerard's warning that his fists are too strong, Renard summons a weapon instead, explaining it's a mercy compared to his bare hands. He warns the men that while they may survive, they won't escape unscathed. Dismissing his words, they charge at him. What follows is a complete rout. Renard unleashes his strength, taking out the group with ease, while declaring that Gem Unbreakable teaches only offense, never defense. One of the men manages to land a strike on Renard's back, but immediately regrets it as he's sent flying. Renard explains that his club won't kill them, it only leaves them crippled and brain damaged, adhering to a sort of Batman logic. As the men groan in pain, their leader weakly asks for Renard's name. Renard sarcastically remarks it's unfair the leader isn't injured yet, and remedies that with a crushing blow. After thoroughly defeating them, Renard watches them limp away and remarks that it was fun while it lasted. The young orc emerges, bowing deeply in gratitude and promising never to forget this day. Renard, surprised, asks if it's proper for a warrior to bow so easily. The orc responds that he now considers Renard his mentor and vows to wield his sword in Renard's service. Renard explains that in orc culture, a mentor is revered for life, akin to a knight serving their lord. The orc asks for Renard's name, and Renard almost says Tisan, but catches himself, introducing himself as Reifart Wald and Therese. The orc promises to remember the name. Renard then asks where the orc plans to go. The young orc replies he's searching for a place to rest. Renard advises him to head to the Land of Trials, where the Blue Bear orc tribe resides. As the orc departs, Renard asks for his name. The orc reveals he is Teod, son of Croa. Renard is stunned, recalling that Croa was one of the 4 heavenly kings and the leader of the Blue Bear tribe. Renard reflects on the encounter, wondering if Tisan had ever met Teod in his original life. Smiling, he realizes this meeting was a twist of fate. He begins to hope he might reunite with all 4 heavenly kings in this timeline. Another 6 months pass. Gerard launches a powerful attack, the Key Blast, at Renard, who barely manages to block it using a spiral guard. Gerard praises him for successfully defending, but then reminisces about Renard claiming, years ago, that he wasn't Tisan. Renard groans and asks why Gerard has to bring up something from 6 years ago. Visibly irritated at the memory of his earlier earlier struggles. Gerard mentions that he has been teaching Reef for 10 years, but finds it strange that Reef is still so small. He comments that everyone at Gym Unbreakable needs to be tall and questions if Reef has been using the breathing technique. Reef awkwardly looks away, admitting he doesn't want to become a giant. Gerard reassures him that it's fine to be short and asks to see the results of his training. Reef prepares himself, then leaps into the air, activating Calamity Horn. 3 rings form on his hand as he descends and strikes the ground, creating a 4th ring, signifying he has reached the 4th stage. The impact shatters the floor, causing a massive shockwave. Gerard watches, laughing and praising Reef, who is stunned at his own progress. Gerard declares it's time for Reef to venture into the outside world, commending his hard work. He jokingly calls him Rifart, telling him to live freely, whether for good or evil, as he has earned the right through his training. Reef calls out to him, but Gerard reflects on lessons he learned from his master, Rastal. Rastal had taught him 3 rules. First, it's fine to gain wealth, but not unjustly. Second, it's acceptable to be a villain as long as it's done with style. And lastly, to stand by those treated unjustly, as being weak doesn't always equate to injustice. Rastal emphasized the importance of distinguishing between the two and continuing the legacy of Gym Unbreakable by finding a disciple worthy of inheriting its teachings. Gerard acknowledges that finding a talented disciple is no easy task, but advises Reef to take the opportunity when it arises. He hands Reef some travel expenses and clothes. Reef is surprised at how little Gerard has, expecting more wealth. But Gerard laughs, explaining that he only received 25 silver coins during his time. He gives Reef a map, pointing to a location in the mountains where he's left a gift, suggesting Reef visit if he passes by. As Reef prepares to leave, he hesitates, questioning his freedom. Suddenly, an 8th stage Calamity Horn goes off behind him, startling him. Gerard encourages him to leave with determination, reminding him that he's the inheritor of the greatest teachings on Earth. The scene transitions to an inn where locals discuss the dangers they face. A knight is asked to pay for the food his group has consumed. Instead, he insults the chief, tossing a coin and claiming it's enough. When the chief insists it's insufficient, the knight strikes him. The villagers begin to perceive the knights as closer to bandits than protectors. Another knight, Edward, enters the scene, and we learn the first knight is named Stefan. Stefan ridicules the villagers, claiming peasants are despicable and undeserving of mercy. The narrative shifts to Reef lying in bed, speaking with S. She pets him, complimenting his thin yet sharp physique, likening him to a well-made blade. Reef, teary-eyed in front of a mirror, laments his slender body, but takes solace in the fact that he's taller now. He notes that SE, at her current stage, is the equivalent of 17 years old in human terms. He's now in South Chrome, within the Vasily Kingdom, and recalls that S will be sold at the Chatten slave auction next year. He contemplates freeing her by force, but decides it's wiser to use money. Aware that slave prices are exorbitant and that he's broke, he relies on his strong body and knowledge of the future. He recalls that there's an ancient rune on the way to Chatten. Meanwhile, Stefan questions a wizard named Todd about whether he's located the ancient ruins yet. Giga-ass Chin begins to focus, and shortly after, they both look toward a mountain, identifying it as the burial site of the swordsman Klo. The scene shifts to Reef, who reflects that it's been 3 days since leaving Chrome. He's heading toward the Heian Mountains, surprised that he doesn't feel the cold. Using his artificial flashback skill, he recalls the information about the ancient ruin, specifically what Todd told him. In his past life, he visited this place and discovered the real treasure Todd's party missed. Reef arrives at Cattle Village, recognizing it as he remembered. The villagers are discussing the Valley of Death, where a party recently demanded a guide. A man named Ted reluctantly volunteers, pressured by the villagers who try to encourage him. However, Ted hesitates and retracts his offer, prompting Reef to jump in, saying he'll guide the group. Ted, startled, asks who Reef is, and Reef explains he overheard their conversation. When asked if he knows the area, Reef confidently responds that he's very familiar with it. The Valley of Death is a dungeon, a remnant of the Silver Age. 50 years ago, a knight named Klo ventured there. Todd mentioned Klo earlier, recounting how he awakened Aura at 45 and embarked on many grand adventures. However, Klo's arrogance led him to the Valley of Death with only one servant, where he met his demise. The demonic sword Alshan was lost there, a significant artifact of the Alshan family. Reef wonders if Stefan, part of the Alshan family, might be Klo's grandson. Reef observes Stefan flirting with an elf in the party and feels a twinge of jealousy. The party includes a saint, a boy named Cylon, which surprises Reef, who thought saints were female. Reef considers speaking with Todd, but notices the atmosphere is odd, suspecting Todd might have feelings for Ceylon. Dismissing the thought, Reef reassures himself that Todd is a great guy. Edward tells Reef he made a wise choice joining the group, and Reef downplays it. Edward comments on the villagers' fear, which Reef acknowledges as valid. When Edward questions what they have to fear with so many knights present, Reef grows irritated, recognizing the arrogance of the group. Suddenly, a scream pierces the air as shapes emerge from the trees and spiral into the sky, revealing themselves to be harpies. The knights ready themselves for battle as the harpies descend. One dives towards Stefan, prompting Todd to cast a fire spell that ricochets among the harpies. Ceylon blesses the knights, and Reef, observing as both a mage and martial artist, notes that while the knights perform adequately, they neglect to protect the porters. A harpy targets the porters, who close their eyes in fear, but it's punched mid-air by Reef, exploding on impact. He mutters that no one is paying attention to him and realizes that if he hadn't taken Ted's place, Ted would have died here. Stefan slices through another harpy, but ignores others in danger around him. Reef notices his tunnel vision and lack of teamwork. Ceylon urges Reef to hide as another harpy attacks, but Reef doesn't dodge, knowing it won't harm him. It pokes him in the eye, and he punches it away effortlessly. After the battle, Stefan checks on the mages and priests, ignoring Reef's pointed question about the porters. Declaring the Alshan Knights strong, Stefan urges everyone to bask in their victory. Reef approaches Todd, thanking him and casually asking if he's from Delphia's Mage Tower. Reef mentions he knows Reifert and introduces him as a friend. Todd, surprised, comments on how unexpected it is for someone like Reifert to have a friend, then begins laughing oddly, calling Reef cute. Reef, unsettled, asks if Reifert is doing well and whether anything strange has happened in recent years. Todd denies it, but starts making comments about Reef's attractiveness, further cementing his eccentric nature. Reef suppresses his anger and asks if his personality is really that different. Todd dismisses the kid's actions, showing no interest. Ceylon approaches Reef, inquiring if he's okay, and Reef replies that he's fine, asking her to heal the orcs. A soldier warns Ceylon to stay away, questioning why he's wasting energy on them. Reef commends Ceylon for her kindness, healing them regardless of their species. Stefan resumes his complaining, monotonously urging Reef to lead the way. Reef instructs them to proceed, and a few hours later, the soldiers appear exhausted, puzzled by the overwhelming number of monsters in the mountains. Reef offers a chance to rest, but Stefan angrily orders them to rise. Reef reflects on how knights are arrogant, clerics are serious, and mages are narrow-minded and frugal, admitting he fits the mage archetype. Stefan remarks that he now understands what drove Chloe to death, marveling at the sheer number of monsters on the small mountain. They eventually spot the dungeon entrance within a ravine. Stefan asks Edward for confirmation, who verifies it as the ancient Palton ruins. They approach the entrance, reaching the main door, where Todd declares it safe to enter. Stefan shouts for everyone to prepare. Reef states he'll wait outside, and Stefan dismissively says his job is done and they'll guide him back later. Reef contemplates killing him, but refrains. Stefan begins chanting, rallying the group to find the demonic sword. Reef wishes them luck as they charge in, then prepares himself, explaining that this dungeon once served as a logistics base during the Silver Age when technology was advanced. Reef recalls visiting the dungeon previously with ESE, who discovered a secret path using her abilities. When they opened the doors back then, it led to risky endeavors in a dangerous zone. Placing his hand on the wall, Reef begins opening a hidden passage, struggling due to limited mana, but eventually succeeding. Removing his coat, he decides to test his physical abilities. Suddenly, he hears screams and realizes they must be coming from the third-floor basement, remembering the dungeon's security system would repel trespassers. Back then, it was just him and Zess, so the system wasn't triggered. Now, with a group present, he starts sweating, acknowledging the danger. Inside, one of the knights is decapitated, and Stefan shouts in panic, questioning how a human can defeat such a monstrous foe. A ghoulish creature emerges, wielding a weapon. Meanwhile, Ceylon heals a soldier, who thanks him. Ceylon emphasizes the need for everyone to survive, and almost falls victim to a collapsing floor, but Todd saves him with protection magic. Todd notes their survival, but expresses uncertainty about what lies ahead. They spot a stairwell as demons and ghouls descend, flinging soldiers aside. Ceylon takes the opportunity to cast magic, invoking courage and blessing the soldiers, boosting their morale to the point of berserker-like rage. The soldiers charge at the demons, ready for battle. Todd marvels at the amount of divine power Ceylon used. Chen, meanwhile, prepares an impressive spell, disarming the demons of their weapons. An elf girl seizes the moment to strike from above, but a demon backhands her, sending her flying across the room. She struggles to speak, asking if she was helpful. Stefan acknowledges her effort with a good job, and we learn her name is Elsia. He immediately follows up with an attack on the demon that had sent her flying, striking a dramatic main character pose afterward. Edward, impressed, comments on Stefan's performance, saying it's expected of him. Stefan rallies everyone, urging them to stay focused, reminding them this was where Chloe had fallen. Suddenly, flames erupt above, and a fiery demon slams into the ground, roaring ferociously and tossing soldiers around like rag dolls. Stefan shouts for them not to falter, insisting they have already made their resolve. As some soldiers attempt to flee, Stefan turns his back to the heat and declares he won't be defeated. Leaping off one of his men's shoulders, he proclaims his family name, Alshan, and his title as the resolute hero. He attacks the demon, piercing it with his sword, but his efforts are futile. The demon retaliates, backhanding him across the room as it had done to Elsia. Stefan crashes onto the ground, lying still with wide open eyes. Cylon prays fervently to his god and launches an attack, managing to land a blow on the demon's head. Although it seems damaged, the demon glares at Cylon and charges toward him. Cylon, overwhelmed with fear, closes his eyes and braces for the worst. Suddenly, a loud impact echoes, and the demon is knocked back. Cylon opens his eyes to see Reef standing in front of him, shielding him. Reef prepares for another strike, but pauses in surprise when the demon is no longer ablaze or moving. He mutters that it's no wonder he almost got taken down by Tison. Surveying the scene, Reef notices the defeated soldiers, remarking that Stefan might be brain dead. More demons begin descending the steps. Todd and Cylon both look at Reef in astonishment, wondering who he really is. In the next scene, Reef is seen holding Elsia. Time skips forward to Stefan regaining consciousness. Edward asks if he's awake, and Stefan looks around, confused by the sight of their defeated foes. He demands to know what happened, and Edward explains that Reef turned out to be a martial artist, a fact they had failed to recognize earlier. Stefan, surprised, asks for Reef's name. Reef simply replies that he's called Reefin. Edward reflects on how he's never heard of such a person before. Stefan, curious about his lineage, asks which family he belongs to. Reef replies that he doesn't have one, prompting Stefan to mentally ridicule him for being of no noble background. Stefan quickly shifts his demeanor, sarcastically praising Reef for merely cleaning up their mess. Reef retorts that Stefan clearly suffered a brain injury and calls him useless. Angered, Stefan demands respect, but Edward intervenes, calming him down by saying it's normal for commoners not to understand certain things. Stefan reluctantly agrees and asks Reef who taught him. Reef, avoiding mentioning Gerard's name, claims to be self-taught. Frustrated, he tells Stefan to stop talking and focus on aiding the injured. Edward observes that Reef speaks so casually and confidently, almost as if he's a royal addressing his subordinates. He muses that Reef might be a royal from another country, noting how strange his demeanor is, like someone older speaking down to younger people. Cylon approaches Reef, asking about his height. Reef answers, and Cylon, visibly excited, inquires about his weight and training regimen. As Cylon moves closer, Reef wonders why he's being so friendly. This leads to a glimpse into Cylon's backstory. Cylon lost his parents early, grew up in an orphanage, and was bullied for being frail and pretty. He longed for a muscular build and a deep voice, dreaming of becoming a monk. However, he never grew taller, his hair grew faster, and his attempts at weight training only enhanced his divine power. Cylon began to admire muscular individuals and now looks up to Reef, admiring his physique and calling him beautiful. Reef quickly deflects, announcing he'll go scout ahead. Cylon offers to join, but Reef tells him to stay behind, reasoning they'll need him around in case of injuries. Stefan announces that he'll proceed, leaving Elsia behind, and asks if it's fine. Reef indifferently responds that he doesn't care. As they walk down the hallway, Stefan internally monologues about how unbelievable it is that someone as common as Reef isn't showing pride at being in his presence. He vows to put Reef in his place soon, even wishing a demon would show up to make it happen. His thoughts are abruptly interrupted when Reef Karate chops him, knocking him out. Reef comments that it's time for the delusional kid to take a nap. As ghouls charge at them, Reef swiftly eliminates them with a series of well-executed combos. Humming to himself, he states it's time to find the treasure. He ventures into a wrecked room, collecting some Silver Age gold, but continuing his search for more valuable items. Eventually, he discovers a limitless bag, a magical item capable of holding vast amounts of loot. Smiling, Reef notes there are plenty of other valuable items inside. Stefan regains consciousness, looking around in confusion. Reef casually tells him the ghouls hit him on the back of the head, claiming it was a one-hit knockout. Stefan, bewildered by his bad luck, thanks Reef, who smiles and then knocks him out again, repeating this process 3 more times. Reef begins to wonder if he'll accidentally kill Stefan at this rate. Stefan groggily remarks that something feels off, as he can't detect anything unusual. Reef suggests they've covered most paths and declares it's time to regroup. As they head back, Cylon asks Reef if he's a royal. Reef denies it, claiming he's just a normal person. Cylon expresses amazement at Reef's abilities, which leads Reef to ask what's wrong with that. Cylon elaborates, pointing out how naturally Reef talks down to others, using Edward as an example, who is 40 years old yet treated like a subordinate. Realizing his mistake, Reef blames his lack of social grace on being unused to talking to people. The group eventually arrives at a unique-looking door. Upon opening it, they are greeted by the sight of a massive monster, the Grill Beast, roaring at them. Reef, surprised, remarks that he doesn't remember it being here before, but concludes it must be because it wasn't dealt with in the past. He advises the group to retreat, pointing out that defeating it now would be nearly impossible. One soldier notices the demonic sword Alshan in the creature's grasp and calls attention to it. Edward then asks Stefan if he seriously intends to fight the beast, to which Stefan responds that it should be obvious. Edward attempts to dissuade Stefan, warning of the danger, but Stefan remains resolute, declaring that he won't let the sword be sullied further. He proclaims that even if the Grim Reaper himself stood in his way, he wouldn't back down, ordering everyone to ready their weapons. Stefan readies himself for battle. Reef, observing from the side, thinks the plan is idiotic. The narrative shifts to reveal more lore about the dungeon. A malfunction in the system allowed supernatural monsters to be absorbed into its defenses, creating a hybrid of the dungeon's guardians and the powerful creatures that once roamed freely. The Grill Beast, enhanced by the dungeon's fused system, now possesses extraordinary strength and powers from another dimension, strong enough to kill even an aura user like Chloe. Stefan notes that the Grill Beast is chained up and mocks his men's fear. Reef warns them that engaging the monster is a death sentence. Edward dismisses Reef's advice, stating that some things are worth risking your life for. The soldiers charge at the Grill Beast, prompting Reef to internally call them foolish. Cylon casts a buffing spell to empower the soldiers, but their initial attacks barely faze the creature, which quickly sends them flying. Reef sighs, remarking that he warned them, and sarcastically notes as another soldier flies past him, "There goes another one." Reef observes the chaos, acknowledging that Stefan is surprisingly holding his ground and dodging attacks, even if his strikes are ineffective. Cylon prepares a powerful support spell, striking a dramatic JoJo-like pose as divine maces materialize to attack the Grill Beast. Meanwhile, Elsia leaps onto the monster's head and coordinates a combo attack with Stefan, delivering a powerful strike against the creature. Reef remarks that Isha is significantly more skilled than Stefan and wonders if he underestimated them too much. As Chen prepares a spell, seemingly a tornado, the system activates, forcing the boss fight into Phase 2. Reef realizes the situation is dire as the Grill Beast breaks free from its chains, immediately attacking the soldiers and dominating them. Stefan charges at the beast, but is quickly uppercut, showcasing his role as a side character. Edward shouts for Stefan and rushes to him, confirming he is alright. Meanwhile, Isha charges in and leaps into the air, managing to hold her own against the Grill Beast. However, the beast lands a hit on her side, sending her flying before preparing a fire breath attack that targets the soldiers. Some soldiers are hit, while others narrowly escape. Cylon finds himself in the direct path of the attack, paralyzed with fear as it nears. At the last moment, Reef intervenes, blocking and deflecting the attack. He apologizes to Cylon for his delayed reaction before preparing to engage the Grill Beast in battle. Reef doubts whether he can handle the beast, but is eager to test his full strength. He notes that as a mage, he would have never taken such a gamble, but as a warrior, he is ready. Reef launches 2 rapid attacks at the Grill Beast, dodging its retaliation, but sustaining a graze that draws blood. The beast counters with a spinning back kick, akin to a UFC fighter, sending Reef flying into a wall. Cylon screams for him, but Reef assures him that he is fine. Cylon, amazed, asks if this is the power of an aura user. Reef responds that he could have countered the blow if he had absorbed it, but chose to parry instead, citing his prior injuries from Gerard. The Grill Beast speaks in an incomprehensible language, prompting Reef to admit he doesn't understand, but is ready to fight. They exchange a flurry of blows, and Stefan, observing Reef's use of aura, is shocked. He questions how a lowborn like Reef can master something he, a noble, cannot even begin to manifest. Stefan grows frustrated, wondering about Reef's origins and calling him a monster. Reef dodges another strike from the Grill Beast, realizing its movements now seem slower to him. He counters by blowing off one of the beast's arms, but the ruins heal its injuries, revealing that guardians can recover even from severe damage. The grill beast begins channeling another breath attack, but Reef evades it, seizing its arm to deliver a devastating RKO. He follows up with a kick to its head and rapid strikes, declaring the grill beast a perfect practice dummy. The soldiers watch in awe as Reef toys with the beast effortlessly. Reef contemplates using Calamity Horn to finish the fight, but hesitates, knowing it would destroy the entire area. Tud suggests he wield a sword imbued with a divine spell to defeat the beast. Reef admits he lacks the skill to cover weapons with aura, as his clan's expertise is limited to using it on their bodies. Sillon calls out to Reef, asking if his body is durable. Reef confirms its strength, prompting Cylon to cast a blessing on him, infusing him with divine power. Surprised by Cylon's ability to use a spell meant for metal objects on his body, Reef notes Cylon's sharp contrast between beauty and an eccentric personality. Determined to end the fight, Reef charges at the grill beast, throwing it into a wall. He follows up with a sequence of attacks, launching it into the air, striking it with his knee, and delivering a series of powerful uppercuts to finish the battle. This causes the object to soar straight into the air, and as it falls, Reef strikes it from below, splitting it in half. Cylon sees Reef striking a pose and immediately starts fanboying intensely, then asks if it's all over. Reef tells him to undo the spell quickly. Stefan stumbles over to Reef, commenting on how well he hid his identity and questioning if they were just a joke to him. He acknowledges Reef's strength, but says he can't forgive him for disrespecting their honor and sneering at them. Reef calmly responds that he never sneered. His interest wasn't personal. He then starts to walk away, but Stefan draws his sword and swings at him. Reef dodges to pick up the demonic sword, causing Stefan to tumble down a hill in a clumsy display. Embarrassed, Stefan asks why Reef dodged. Reef explains he was retrieving the sword since Stefan seemed so fixated on it. Edward remarks that Reef's lack of greed in the face of power is a testament to true strength. Reef thinks the sword is just a second-rate weapon and not worth desiring, but says it's time to leave. Back in Cattle Village, the villagers watch as Cylon heals a baby. Reef notices Cylon handing out gold and remarks that he's quite clever. As Stefan's group departs, Stefan tells Edward he wants to investigate Reef, convinced he isn't weaker than him. Reef decides it's time to meet ESE, but Cylon begins following him. When asked why, Cylon explains that some priests travel to share the goddess's grace, and he wanted to use this opportunity for a pilgrimage, possibly traveling with Reef. Reef notices Cylon's intense gaze and wonders if he's attracted to him, unsure how to reject him. However, he reasons that Cylon could be useful as a healer, especially if S gets hurt. Cylon, curious about Reef's physique, asks how to get abs. Reef tells him about his training regimen. Later that night, a man named Barrett scolds a young elven girl, criticizing her lack of proper training. He remarks that elves should be loyal and obedient in mind and body. Observing her defiant eyes, he orders his butler to find a better product, calling her defective and planning to return her. This elf, known as 148, is being returned for the third time and is likely. Meanwhile, Reef arrives in Zeppelin, part of the Chatten region, where the streets are bustling with activity. Cylon, impressed by the city, complains that Reef walks too fast, joking that he's showing off his long legs. They then notice a wealthy noble abusing a poor man. The noble, Tariq, strikes the man and throws 30 gold coins at him, declaring it sufficient punishment. Cylon rushes to the man's aid, heals him, and suggests involving the authorities. But the man declines, saying the money is enough. Disheartened, Cylon asks if the man plans to let the incident go. Reef comments that the people here are driven by money, while Cylon remarks on how strange the place is and wonders how it functions as a commerce city. He then asks why Reef is there, and Reef responds that he's there to buy something. When Cylon presses for details, Reef nervously admits he's there to buy an elf. Shocked, Cylon jumps to conclusions, covering himself and accusing Reef of being one of those types. Reef tries to explain, but Cylon concedes that he might be no different. The scene shifts to a noble estate where Beret discusses elves. When asked about the elf he recently purchased, Barrett explains that he returned her. A man named Bori mocks him for failing to domesticate the elf. Barrett challenges him to try for himself, mentioning that others have also returned her. Bori accepts the challenge, determined to succeed. Meanwhile, the narrative jumps back to Reef asking Cylon what on earth he is doing. He mentions struggling to do a push-up, and Reef advises him not to overexert himself since he can't risk him ending up with DOMS. Cylon reassures him that he'll always be able to move. Reef then observes Cylon healing himself, and Cylon explains that it's as simple as that. Reef realizes why Cylon isn't building muscle healing magic, essentially reverses time, and since muscle growth requires damage and repair, Cylon's body is resetting to its pre-training state. Cylon asks if something is wrong, but Reef assures him it's fine and promises to teach him a better method later. Reef then asks if Cylon's long hair is bothersome, to which Cylon responds that it just grows quickly. Reef wonders what Cylon is thinking, mentioning a Korean saying about hair growth being linked to lewd thoughts. Finally, Reef announces it's time to head to the slave auction, and they leave. At the auction, Reef explains that there are many species available, but elves are the most popular due to their beauty, making them significantly more expensive than others, up to 160 times as much. Their long lifespans also mean slower growth stages, leading to a well-known joke that a foolish merchant will die before their baby elf matures. They head to Elfenheim, an elf-only auction, a name Reef despises. Cylon reacts with a cross-eyed expression, and Reef points out that despite better treatment than other slaves, elves are still not happy. Cylon remarks that elves lived in the wild before, so he doesn't understand why they wouldn't be content here. Reef counters, saying this is the typical human perspective, and that he needs to build a better empire than his previous one. A man enters, apologizing for the wait, and introduces them to Elfenheim's prized beauties. Cylon quickly covers his eyes, screaming as the man mistakes him for a young lady. Reef asks if there are any with darker skin, prompting the man to comment on his unique taste. Cylon looks disgusted, and Reef tries to explain, but the man says there's one matching that description and leads them to her. Walking through the halls, the man explains how elves are given exercise and a diet designed for queens of the forest to improve their scent. Annoyed, Reef snaps that he doesn't care and demands to be taken to the slave. The man awkwardly coughs and complies, leading them to a door marked 148. Inside, young elves spar with one another, and across the room is the female elf Reef requested. Overcome with emotion, Reef begins to cry, having finally found her. A flashback shows him in a lab with S.I., who scolds him for mixing the wrong substances, leading to an explosion. Reef apologizes, claiming he thought he was cooking, and seizes him for burning it. Despite his age, she finds him cute, wipes his face, and continues to call him Sir Reefart, though Reef urges her to simply call him Reef. She refuses, and when he asks why, the scene shifts to a burning empire. Reef looks over the devastation, flanked by the 4 heavenly kings. Teod delivers his final regards, and Reef remarks on the futility of humanity's 2 million strong force. He wonders about the aftermath, but resolves to stay behind to ensure the others can escape. He apologizes to Poth, admitting failure despite divine assurances. Poth insists it was an oracle, revealing a prophecy that Reef would appear and lead them to salvation. Reef is surprised, struggling to comprehend, but tells the heavenly kings to survive and that he hopes to meet them again. Turning to ESE, he urges her to leave as well, but she declares she'll wait for him. He tells her that there's no predicting the future and advises her to find someone nice. She reiterates that she'll wait for him, and though he tries to dissuade her, she firmly cuts him off. Realizing her resolve, he hugs her tightly. The flashback ends as the slave handler comments that he hates, showing customer number 148 because she's defective, with a terrible personality. He confirms if Reef really wants to buy her and mockingly adds he could throw in a few hundred gold coins, calling Reef's taste strange. He sets her price at 300 gold coins, which Cylon notes is surprisingly cheap. Then appears, asking if Reef is her new owner. Seeing her scars, Reef begins to remove his jacket. A man suggests calling a priest, but Reef declines, saying he'll handle it. He places the jacket on her, telling her to wear it for now. Since she doesn't have a name, he proposes she take the name S. She agrees and declares her name to be S. Valencia. When she asks if it's his surname, he denies it and introduces himself as Reef. She acknowledges this, and the scene transitions. The slave handler is seen informing someone that 148 is gone. It's Porky, who is stunned and wonders if Beret purchased her. The handler clarifies that it was an unfamiliar customer. When Porky asks for the buyer's name, the handler says he didn't bother since the man paid immediately. Porky is surprised someone could afford an elf, but the handler mentions she was defective and thus cheap. He then describes Reef's appearance to Porky, ensuring he'd recognize him. The narrative shifts to SU, now healed and trying on new clothes. Reef says it's good enough, and even Cylon blushes. Reef asks if S is hungry, to which she responds by asking if Master is. He corrects her, saying not to call him that. She inquires if he plans to return her, but Reef reassures her that's not his intention. She questions why he treats her like a human girl, to which Reef responds she should see him as a comrade and call him by his name instead of master. Quips that he must be into adventurer roleplay, acting like a hero traveling with a swordswoman. She munches on food, commenting that humans are all the same. Reef shares lore about the restaurant, describing it as a place of worship. Cylon remarks that if it's meant for worship, the food should be free, but Reef explains it's a business tied to Phylan's religion, which intertwines beauty and commerce. While they talk, Reef notices eating enthusiastically. Embarrassed, she tries to appear dignified when she catches his gaze. Reef wonders if she dislikes the food, but explains he wanted to treat her well. He reflects on meeting her as a savior versus now as a buyer, contrasting the two encounters. He wonders if their meeting was premature, but resolves that she'll accept him in time. Later, they visit a weapons vendor, where Reef asks Ease to choose a weapon. She selects a rapier, and Reef comments that he thought she used a scimitar. Surprised by his knowledge, Cylon covers for him, claiming he could tell by her hands. Cylon also picks out a weapon, prompting Reef to question why a priest would need one. As they leave, Reef notices a group of men in an alley watching them. One steps forward, saying they want to talk. Reef coldly asks what they want, and the man explains a noble is interested in the elf. Reef glares, prompting the man to offer a reasonable price and show a bill of exchange. Reef flatly declines, and the man presses, questioning if he's refusing. Reef retorts, calling the man foolish for not understanding. The man insists they're offering a significant sum, but Reef dismisses him, stating it's the other way around. The man doesn't grasp that Reef isn't interested, so he declares Reef has no choice and walks away. Reef watches them leave, wondering about their intentions. Cylon remarks that the man is a goofy character. The scene transitions to Porky's house at night, where Porky questions Ramad about returning empty-handed. Ramad explains that Reef was unwilling. Porky, frustrated, orders Ramad to beat Reef up and throw coins at him. Ramad suggests an alternative: kidnap the elf, tell Reef she died, and compensate him with money. Porky agrees and instructs Ramad to take Landis with him. Back at Reef's lodging, he is seen counting his remaining gold. He mentions he originally had 2,000 gold prepared, but now has much more left, though it's still insufficient for rebuilding his empire. He considers investing the gold instead of carrying it, reflecting on a past famine in the Coven Kingdom, which had fertile, goddess-blessed lands, but was unprepared for such a disaster. Reef ponders investing in grains. He recalls 3 trade unions: Rowan, Karen, and Tobin. However, he dismisses Rowan due to its leader's misconduct towards Seer. Ultimately, he decides Tobin is the better choice. The scene shifts to Tobin's leader, Shoal, discussing how the Rowan are underselling their wheat and barley, potentially jeopardizing their partnerships. A subordinate announces a guest, and Shoal jokes about sending them away if they aren't wealthy. However, the guest offers 1,500 gold, revealed to be Reef, who expresses interest in investing in grains for the Kreen Kingdom. Shoal scoffs, comparing the investment to selling soap to orcs. Reef jokes in response, stating it's his risk to bear, and he'd benefit if the gamble succeeds. Shoal hesitates, advising against a bad investment, but Reef threatens to take his business elsewhere. Shoal quickly relents, admitting their financial struggles and suggesting other investment opportunities. Reef insists it's his money and his choice, asking only for a promise not to use it for personal gain. Shoal agrees. Reef then inquires about other branches, particularly one near the Grey Kingdom and Delia's Mage Tower. Shoal confirms a branch in the Grey Kingdom, but none near the tower, though travelers often pass by it. Reef requests an investigation into someone there, viewing it as a chance to gather information about his other body. The narrative transitions to S holding a dagger. She begins swinging it skillfully, impressing Cylon. As she leaps through the air, memories surface her mother once told her that high elves were the guardians of the forest, friends of all within it. Although pushed back by humans, their leader Eldea would eventually guide them back to paradise. Her mother emphasized their descent from the Great Fairy, urging her to preserve their pride. The flashback darkens as S watches her kingdom burn. An elf tells her she'll be sold for her beauty and must learn loyalty and politeness to survive. She recalls being beaten, fed scraps, and mocked by other elves for her pure blood. Her solace became the sword, a tool that rekindled her connection to her mother's teachings about pride. Back in the present, S finishes her practice, tears streaming as she speaks in Elvish to ground herself. Cylon claps, praising her performance and asking how she moved so fluidly. Humbly says she just tried her best. Cylon sighs, noting that both she and Reef give the same response, then tries to mimic her moves. The moment is interrupted by Ramad's voice. He spots S and commands her to follow him, stating it's time to meet her true master. Stares at him, noticing quite a few men present. Cylon points at them, questioning their identity, and Ramad assures him they aren't expecting anyone as they've taken precautions. Cylon dismisses the threat, saying he's not that guy. One of the men lunges at him, calling him annoying, but C intercepts the attack and slits his throat. The other men charge at her, but she evades their blows and counters with precise strikes, killing them swiftly. Romad, shocked by her strength, remarks on her audacity as a slave. Ceylon begins casting a spell, but Ys pulls him aside just as a dagger is thrown at him. Romad quips that no one will care if a pilgrim dies. Ceylon is shaken, but Ys reassures him and steps forward, twirling her dagger confidently. She points it at the group, dismissing the threat. Romad, angered, signals to someone named Takeda, calling him to action. An orc warrior steps forward, declaring they'll capture the elf. As he speaks about her fate, Romad warns him not to harm her. The orc charges, and C blocks his attack, but he counters with a blunt strike resembling a Brazilian kick, hitting her shoulder. Recognizing his strength, she wishes she had her scimitar. She counters, aiming for his throat, but he blocks her attack. Ramad questions why the orc struggles against an elf, and Takeda jokes about possibly going hungry. They continue battling, with the orc gradually gaining the upper hand. He raises his sword for a decisive blow, but C charges forward, blocking it with her dagger. Takeda hesitates, unwilling to injure her, and redirects his sword. Seizing the opportunity, she wounds him by slicing through his armor. He accuses her of recklessness, but she replies that she trusted his skill. Ceylon asks if she can block flying daggers, and she confidently says yes. Encouraged, Ceylon begins chanting again, but Ramad throws a dagger at him. Quickly deflects it. Ceylon prays to his goddess Philin for aid, summoning a flurry of maces. The attackers are stunned as a massive mace swings down, creating a dust cloud. Ceylon explains that S's spells work only on demons and the undead, but will buy them time. Grabs him, throws her dagger at a wall, and uses it to leap through a window, shielding him from the glass. Ramad orders Takeda to pursue them. An older man, likely Lantis, intervenes, criticizing the fuss over an elf and their failure to capture her, despite having a veteran orc warrior. After Ramad reveals their direction, Lantis vanishes and reappears in a tree, quickly leaping through a window. Even Ramad is impressed by his speed, attributing it to his aura abilities. Lantis remarks that he enjoys this game of hide and seek. Meanwhile, Ceylon and S flee down a hallway, with Ceylon suggesting they can handle a few more pursuers. Still mistakenly thinks Ceylon is a girl. One of Ramad's men intercepts them, but is met with a flying kick from S. Ceylon urges haste, casting another spell. Lantis, using his aura to sense their movements, follows them and kicks down a door, surprised by the cleric's capabilities. As Ramad catches up, out of breath, he asks if Lantis has located them. Lantis dismisses him, noting they haven't gone far, but the duo outmaneuvers him, and Ceylon descend a staircase, and S questions why they aren't heading to the streets. Ceylon explains they must avoid people, as the public could turn against them. He now understands why pilgrims rarely survive, but is determined not to return to captivity due to his personal resolve. He refuses to explain further, stating that only Reef could provide answers, and wonders where Reef might be. Questions Reef's strength, and Ceylon emphasizes the urgency of finding him. Ceylon begins casting a spell as they move, revealing paths to follow. He explains that love transforms coincidences into destiny and likens the spell to the threads of fate. Ceylon believes that with fortune on his side, finding Reef should be his destiny, although the spell is intended for lovers and not meant for such use. He reassures S of her strength, noting that he has only encountered one other slayer like her, named Ija. She expresses surprise at his high clerical rank, and Ceylon admits that talking to her feels more like speaking to a human than a slave. S asks if they've reached the correct place, and Ceylon confirms this is where fate has led them. Footsteps are heard, and they see Lantis. This quickly points out that it's not Reef, and Lantis smugly remarks that finding them took effort and warns them not to run again. Z realizes escaping would expose them, leaving no choice but to fight. She lunges at Lantis, swinging her dagger, but he swiftly moves behind her, acknowledging her talent. She retaliates, but Lantis effortlessly evades, commenting on her unusual determination for a slave. S wonders what kind of being he is, while Ceylon recognizes Lantis' immense power and questions his presence. Ceylon blesses his blade with divine power, prompting Lantis to note Ceylon's high level, comparable to a bishop. Encouraged by Ceylon to fight, attacks, but Lantis dodges effortlessly, claiming it changes nothing. Ceylon praises S's efforts, but her blade suddenly breaks, leaving her shocked. Lantis strikes her, sending her flying and drawing blood, admitting he was merely toying with her. Ceylon realizes Lantis is an aura user and questions why someone of such caliber is there, knowing aura users can live luxuriously anywhere. Ramad arrives, addressing Lantis by name, which Ceylon recognizes. He recalls Lantis as a famed knight from the Tikan Kingdom, celebrated for mastering aura in his 30 essay. However, Lantis had a dark secret, a growing depravity starting with slaves and escalating to humans, which disgraced his kingdom. Ceylon labels him a monster, likening him to the boogeyman, disgusted that an aura user could commit such vile acts. Lantis grins, boasting about killing hundreds in Tikan and fleeing, finding joy in tormenting them. Romad, however, smirks, seeing value in using Lantis's infamy and aura for their benefit, given his depraved tendencies. Lantis flexes his fingers, preparing to seal Cylon's powers temporarily, acknowledging Cylon's high level and the danger of letting him act. Romad warns Lantis not to harm the elf further, mentioning Pori's disapproval. Lantis dismisses the concern, claiming he can heal her later, and comments on Cylon's attractive appearance, mistakenly thinking he's a woman. Cylon quickly clarifies that he's a man, which only amuses Lantis more, declaring his intent to take care of him. Lantis injures Raid's hand and marvels at his endurance despite being unable to heal, calling him a beautiful yet fragile zombie and suggesting his limb might need amputation. Suddenly, a massive explosion erupts behind the group. Cylon feels a surge of hope as Reef arrives, announcing he's found them and admonishing them for targeting C. Menacingly approaching, Reef removes his jacket, revealing his muscular build, which surprises Lantis. He questions the overwhelming presence he senses from Reef, while Romad remarks that Reef is the one who purchased the elf. Lantis, stunned, admits he was led to believe Reef was just an ordinary man. He begins to shiver, remarking that he can sense he's far from ordinary and must also be an aura user since he cannot gauge his skill. However, he wonders how someone so young could be so powerful, guessing he must be in his late 30s. Lantis remarks that it's been a while since he's encountered someone strong. Reef chuckles, telling him to stop pretending to be a knight when he's just an old pervert and to get started already. Lantis unsheathes his blade, and Reef prepares himself. Reef charges at Lantis, who reciprocates, and their strikes clash, creating a shockwave. Reef towers over Lantis and aims for an overhand strike, but Lantis smiles as they begin trading blow after blow. Lantis seems to be enjoying the exchange. One of Rod's men observes the chaos and suggests they should retreat. Romad agrees, saying they'll die if they get caught in the battle. They scramble to higher ground to escape the fight. As the clash continues, Ys is shocked that Reef can use aura. Cylon reminds her that he had already mentioned it. Lantis quickly realizes Reef's mastery of aura isn't something from someone who recently awakened. He swings his blade, creating a claw-like aura attack. Reef dodges under it, but the aura wraps around him. He counters with a key bullet. Lantis remarks on Reef's proficiency with aura, guessing he either awakened in his teens or is in his 40s with a baby face, either possibility seeming absurd. Reef continues blocking Lantis's attacks, marveling at his strength and vowing to defeat anyone who claims martial arts is only for character development. Lantis creates some distance, surprised that Reef is fighting barehanded, and asks if he's Gerard's disciple. Reef stares silently, not answering. Lantis questions why someone so powerful cares so much about a slave. Reef retorts, asking who he's calling a slave, and pointing out that slaves are still people with emotions. Lantis is taken aback as Reef challenges him, asking if he's ever spoken to slaves or tried to understand their lives. Reef punches Lantis, breaking the pillar he was standing on. Lantis dismisses Reef's words, but Reef continues, explaining how people in his past life shared the same dismissive mindset. Reef elaborates that humanity sees other species as emotionless, even though they laugh and cry like humans. He questions what humans excel compared to elves. Lantis defends the practice, claiming it's natural to enslave other species and questioning what they would do otherwise. Reef counters, asking why the descendants of the great fairies should be slaves, suggesting that if humans didn't dominate the world, they might be enslaved instead. He attacks Lantis again, but gets injured in the process. Reef explains that when humanity enslaved others, they celebrated their dominance. Charging in with fierce determination, Reef declares that permitting slavery is akin to permitting his own subjugation. Lantis accuses Reef of insanity, questioning whether he truly believes the species are equals. Reef destroys the ground beneath Lantis and declares that size is not a slave. He punches at Lantis, but the latter dodges. Reef comments on the deep-rooted slavery system in the continent, where weak and powerless humans are often enslaved to fate that stems from flawed ideologies. The two continue clashing until Reef lands a powerful kick to Lantis's side, sending him crashing into a wall. As Lantis tries to recover, Reef appears before him, furious and determined to change the status quo. Reef punches Lantis in the stomach, making him cough up blood and driving him further into the wall. The force shatters the wall entirely, sending Lantis flying into a higher section of the ruins. Reef repeats himself, stating his determination to change the world so no one can call her a slave or even associate her with slavery. He vows to reshape the perception of the world for her sake. She calls him insane, labeling him absolutely crazy, and questions how far his role-playing has gone. She wonders if he is just a helpless pervert but her thoughts shift as she recalls him mentioning the great fairies, a tale her mother had told her before. Meanwhile, Lantis begs for mercy, and Reef questions why he should spare him. Lantis swears on his sword that he will reflect on his sins and turn his life around. Reef acknowledges the sincerity in his expression, but admits his disdain for the S-Holy Order. He demands that if Lantis wants to repent, he must turn himself in. Lantis agrees, saying he'll do just that, and assures Reef there's no need to stain his hands with dirty blood. Reef retorts that it's already too late. His hands are already tainted. Still, he concedes, offering Lantis a quick and painless death if he truly repents. Moments later, the sound of Lantis hitting the floor echoes, and his head is cracked open like a watermelon. Reef remarks that the word repent isn't for bastards to use lightly. He gets off the wall and checks on Cylon and asks if he's okay, but doesn't address him as Sir, making him blush. She finds his reaction odd. Cylon points out that Ramad and his group are trying to escape. Reef commands them to come back, warning that running will only lead to something fun. He demands to know who sent them and promises mercy in exchange for answers. They hesitate, sweating nervously. Later that night, beaten and broken, they reveal it was Porky of the ROI and Union. Reef recognizes the name. It's the man who abused S for a decade in his past life. Reef had wanted to kill him back then, but discovered he was already dead. Ramad warns him not to go after Porky, noting that he controls the second largest trade union in the Principality and is a powerful enemy. Reef acknowledges this, saying he knows exactly what kind of person Porky is. Keeping his promise of mercy, Reef tells them to huddle together to avoid freezing to death. Two of them blush, prompting Ramad to call them freaks. The scene shifts to Porky's house, where he and Beret are dressed in robes. They are accompanied by elves meant for Liz to abuse and kill. Barrett complains about the noise outside, and Porky brushes it off as just another chaotic day. Outside, their guards are being overpowered, turning into potato-like figures as they are defeated one by one. Cylon erases their memories, prompting Reef to ask why. Cylon explains that physical injuries can also leave mental scars, and that his ability helps in such cases. Reef jokes that without Cylon's powers, he would have gone in alone and taken Porky's head himself. Cylon admits he'd like to see Porky beaten to death too. Takeda appears, and Reef questions his honor as a warrior, asking why he's serving someone like Porky. Takeda explains that it's his duty and that abandoning his principles would strip him of his warrior's pride.